Welcome to Beaver Tracks, a damn good podcast where we bring you inside the world of OSU and share a behind-the-scenes look at Beaver Nation. I'm Kolbie Kopp, and I'm an admissions advisor at OSU based on our Corvallis campus. Thank you for joining us today. Today, joining us on the podcast, we have Joselyne Tellez and Jordan Lockhart. Joselyne is an academic advisor and recruiter for our College of Education here at OSU, and Jordan is a current student and peer ambassador. We're unfortunate to have them on the podcast today to share their knowledge and expertise all about OSU's College of Education. So welcome to you both, and thank you for being here today. If you'd just like to kind of extend on general introductions, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Jordan, if you'd like to share a little bit about your, where you're at here at OSU and kind of the program you're pursuing.
I'm Jordan. I'm a fourth year of a 5-year plan, so I'll be student teaching next year. I'm double majoring in history and secondary education, pursuing a teaching license in social studies education with an ESOL endorsement.
And then a little bit more about me. I'm an academic advisor / recruiter for the College of Education. I work primarily with our first year students, so students transitioning from high school into their first year here at OSU. I also work with prospective students, so transfer students, change of majors, or students who are just interested in learning more.
Perfect. Thank you both for those introductions. Nice to meet you. Very happy to have you here. I guess we'll kind of just dive in deep into the conversation because there's a lot I would love to learn from you both, starting first with just kind of a general overview of kind of the programs that OSU can provide to prospective students that are curious about what OSU has to offer in terms of, education degrees. I know this can obviously be probably a whole separate podcast on its own because I know there is so much to talk about for this topic, but kind of just like an overarching general idea of what students could expect to find here at OSU.
So the first thing is obviously what people are going to think of when you think of College of Education, which is K through 12 teaching licensure programs. So we have undergraduate degrees available in 4-year plans, standalone. You don't need a master's degree, which is really exciting, in both elementary and secondary licensure. We also have master's degrees for STEM education. We can do Masters of Arts in Teaching for various endorsements that we have available. And then K through 12 teaching adjacent, we have counseling programs, and we also do professional development and ongoing education for current licensed teachers.
Okay. And then just to kind of extend on that from my general understanding of like recruiting and what we tell students that we kind of offer, the main things are, right, like elementary pathway, 4-year pathway for undergrad, and then we have secondary options, 4-year and the double degree, which like a 5-year program. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about kind of the differences between those and maybe the content areas that students can find for like the secondary pathways?
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting. Just last spring, we changed our secondary program. It was only offered as a double degree where students had to pick a primary major alongside education. And oftentimes students would pick a major that aligned with their desired teaching area, like Jordan, who is double majoring in history and education. As I mentioned, that has changed. So students can now do a standalone degree in education with content areas in the math and sciences. So we have advanced and foundational math. We have biology, chemistry, physics, integrated sciences. We also offer social studies, language arts, health, and fun fact, we are the only university in the state of Oregon that offers family and consumer sciences as an endorsement. And so those are the options students can choose from. Jordan, if you want to talk a little bit more about the double degree versus the standalone.
Yeah, so when students do 2 majors, which is still an option, just not a requirement anymore, and that's available for both elementary and secondary students, you are completing the full degree requirements for both majors, so you're not skipping out on anything, but you do still have to hit the same credit load of 180 to graduate. So it is doable for some students to still get it done in 4 years, especially because our amazing advising team works really hard to make sure that as many classes are double dipping, triple dipping even, so that you're getting a lot of good content and what you want to teach. And double majoring is still a good option for students who want more in-depth knowledge in the content. So I could just teach with my social studies license, but I really love learning about history. So the double major still made sense for me.
Perfect. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about what might be the benefit of doing a double degree for like a secondary student? What could be a benefit of pursuing the double degree versus just going the 4-year route? What might be some like pros or cons if someone's wondering like, why would I want to do one or the other?
Yeah, from the advising standpoint, I have a lot of students who are really interested in teaching multiple subjects. A lot of my students are like, I want to teach biology. And they're like, just kidding. I want to do social studies now. Oh, just kidding. I want to do language arts and teach English. And so having a secondary major can kind of open up that pathway and explore some of those interests without having to kind of declare multiple endorsements. Additionally, a lot of students are interested in doing graduate work. And so having a secondary major can kind of help set you up to do graduate work in that field. Jordan, if you want to add anything else?
Yeah, that was great. That's definitely the reason I'm still in it, is that I know long term I want to do graduate work in history. And so having that foundation in my bachelor's degree makes sense. But it also is something to take into consideration that you are taking so many more classes. Mm-hmm. So time-wise, financially, whatever the case may be, it's definitely not the best situation for everybody. So it's really just about figuring out what's going to work for you and your future plans, and talking with your advisor about what your long-term goals are, and then what's the best plan right now to set you up on that.
Perfect. Very good insight to have. I like having these little like snips that I can share with students, because sometimes they ask questions like that. So it's always good to know, like for myself specifically, like what would be some pros and cons for, one way or the other. But to kind of extend on the different content areas, and this is something that I also am really curious to know, but could be relevant to someone, listening. As a recruiter, for admissions, we get a lot of questions when it comes to College of Ed of sometimes those more niche content areas of like, I want to be an agricultural sciences teacher, or maybe I want to go like special education or art or things like that. And I know those a lot of times are more niche than, a typical like core subject. For students that are considering coming to OSU, are options like that, is that something that, our staff here can help them kind of pursue a pathway for, or kind of how does that work when students are interested in more of those like niche content areas?
I love this question because I think this is a scenario that we encounter almost on the daily. And so, yes, we try to work really closely with students to hear about what are your long-term goals. And so in our advising appointments, that's something that I ask, like, why do you want to be a teacher? What do you want to teach? And, if you can think that far ahead, because 4 years is quite a lot of time, where do you see yourself? And so for some of those more niche programs, we do have some options. And so really excited to say that we just launched the Master's in Special Education I think 2 months ago. And so that is now an option for students. Special education is considered a specialty endorsement by the state of Oregon. And so students have to complete a separate program to be endorsed to teach special education. And so what's really fantastic about our master's is that it is suitable for students who don't have a teaching license and want to be endorsed in that area, or for students who already have a license but might want to add it and kind of enhance their, primary license. And so we do have that program. Really excited about that. As far as like agricultural sciences, that's also another really popular program that students ask us about. I know that that we do have a master's not through the College of Education, but through what we like to call our sister college. The College of Agriculture has the master's, and so students can do that. Some other popular niches that students ask us about is, definitely art, and, world languages. And so in those scenarios, we do typically advise students to do a double degree, with, Spanish, and then a content area that we do offer, or art in a content area that we offer, again, to get that initial license. And then they can always go back and get a master's, which does usually kind of give higher pay once you're a teacher. So those are some kind of alternatives for, you really want to come to OSU, but you also really want to teach art, is that we can definitely find a pathway that'll fit the needs of the student.
Awesome. Wonderful to hear. It's always really exciting to share that those are like options and things that we have the capacity to help students, find the pathway that they're wanting to pursue. I know Jordan had mentioned that you were pursuing the ESOL endorsement. Do you want to share more about some of those other like endorsements that students can add on to like their major available within the College of Education?
Yeah, so ESOL stands for English Speakers of Other Languages. So this endorsement is giving teachers the techniques and tools in order to better structure classrooms and lessons to teach the students who have a primary language that isn't English. So you do not need a fluency in a different language in order to receive this endorsement, but it's just helping you with those students. It is only a couple extra courses, and even in the elementary program, you can get your ESOL endorsement kind of built into your requirements anyway. And it's going to help practically in the classroom. Especially in Oregon, there is a high percentage of English language learners. And so having those tools to be able to teach to every student in your classroom is great, but it's also really practical in helping with job applications, and students can normally find positions a little bit easier with it. The other professional endorsement that we have is a dual language specialization, which builds on the ESOL endorsement. We have it available in English and Spanish dual language. So this is for students not who want to teach Spanish class, but who want to teach in a bilingual or dual immersion classroom where you're delivering the content in English and Spanish. So like I said, it builds on the ESOL endorsement. So you get that one, and then it's a couple extra courses. This one, like the title implies, does require fluency in Spanish, and it is the only language that we have this endorsement available in.
Perfect. Wonderful. And did you say that they would get both of those? You would get the certificate and the ESOL endorsement, or would they just get one or the other?
Yeah, so
Both.
the dual language one builds on the ESOL. So you take all of the same courses that the ESOL specializations
Gotcha.
take, and then it's an additional 2, I believe, to get the extra dual language.
Okay. Okay, very nice. Good to know. So kind of set the foundation for what your options are, what you can kind of pursue. I think the other big thing that a lot of students want to know about when kind of considering attending OSU for, College of Education is, what would my time look like here? A lot of students, I think, have questions, at least that talk to me, about like, what is the student teaching? What is the practicum, the shadowing, all that sort of thing. So could you kind of outline what the general timeline looks like in terms of like your first year, second year, you're doing this, and then as you proceed on, this is what it'll start to like transition into?
Yeah, I can totally start with like the first 2 years, and then I will turn it to Jordan, who is kind of going through the practicum right now and will be entering student teaching. But all of our programs follow the same kind of structure, where the first 2 years are really dedicated to your pre-major requirements. So you're taking your foundational education classes, you're doing classes for the core education, those general university requirements that all students complete. For secondary students, you're taking your content courses, so your history classes. For elementary education students, again, still doing your content courses. So making sure you're doing all of that. If you pick up a secondary major or even pick up a minor, you're making sure you're completing those courses in your first 2 years of the program. And then once all those requirements are completed, you then move into the professional level of the program. And so those are the last 2 years. That's when you start doing that year-long practicum experience to set yourself up for the last year, which is our year-long student teaching placement. And so Jordan, if you want to talk more about your practicum experience and then how you're gearing up for the student teaching year.
Yeah, so practicum is kind of our baby version of student teaching. So students are still taking the bulk of their classes on campus during the day, and they're only typically in the classroom they've been placed in, maybe 1 day a week. And depending on the teacher and the student's preferences, it's varying degrees of observation. For elementary students, it's sometimes leading reading groups or small group math discussions. For secondary students, you can be helping with essay writing or leading a lab in a science class, for example. But it's really up to the students and their mentor teacher to decide how much involvement they're going to be doing. And the really cool thing about having a full year for practicum is that students will get the opportunity to jump around between different classes. So elementary students can go through different grades because first grade is very different to fifth grade. And so that year gives them the flexibility to try different age levels. And secondary students are also able to jump around to the middle school level, the high school level. For myself in social studies, I was able to see a government type classroom, but then also an ancient history classroom, which is also very different. And then once you move into the student teaching year, which is another professional application for students to go through, that's when you start really ramping up the involvement in the classroom. Students are eased over the course of the year to have more responsibility. So you start out in the fall term about 50-50 split in your placement classroom and still taking courses on campus. And it's not until spring term that you're really full-time student teaching in that room with your cooperating teacher. And similar circumstances, you're still taking courses, doing assignments, filling out your teaching portfolio, and exactly what your role in the classroom is really a discussion between the student and the cooperating teacher.
Very nice. Did you say that it becomes a point between the practicum and like the student teaching? Do students have to apply to that kind of like professional program, or is it just like a transition into those?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so there is an application process. What's really fantastic is that we've started to build in the application process in the practicum year. And so as students are taking that class and those courses, we're building in the requirements to apply for student teaching, right? So we're making sure students are submitting updated resumes and cover letters. We're making sure students are completing their background checks to be able to work in schools. They're completing their content mastery. So making sure that they're ticking off like, yes, I did take my English 101 class to be, to show that I have proficiency in that course. Or for, Jordan, like making sure that I took these, United States history courses. So we build that into the program, and so that students don't have to do it on their own, but also getting to build some of those foundational skills for them to be a teacher and also have a resume kind of updated and available.
Is that application process a competitive process, or is it mainly just criterion based? Like as long as you meet the criteria, then you would, be admitted into that program, or is it like a capacity thing, or how does that work?
Great question. As we continue to grow, things might change, but as of now, our program is non-competitive. We have plenty capacity to admit students who are meeting the basic criteria. And so at the basic level, again, students must have completed all of their major requirements in content mastery. They have to have a 3.0 GPA. To be admitted into the program. And then again, completing the resume, background check, and submitting the materials to be admitted.
Perfect. And then to extend on the student teaching, how are students placed for that? Do they give preferences of like, these are the places that I would like to be placed within a certain like mile radius? Or is it, can I go like, maybe I want to go back home and student teach in another part of the state? Or how does the placement process work?
So because students are still taking in-person classes in Corvallis, they have what they're referring to as a 60-minute drive radius. So typically students are placed somewhere between Salem and Eugene or about as far out. But typically much closer than that, Corvallis, Albany, and Philomath are the most popular areas for students to be placed in. We fill out a preference form during your practicum year to state if there's specific schools or districts or even teachers that you would like to student teach with. So some students request the teacher that they had during their practicum year, or the school that they went to if they're from the area is absolutely doable. And then there's a meeting that you have with our licensure coordinators to discuss transportation, financial issues, things like that, to figure out where you can best be placed. But students aren't able to travel typically farther than Salem to Eugene, just because you are going to be on campus several days a week, and even placed in Portland can be really difficult for students to get back to Corvallis.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I guess this might be kind of backtracking, but another question I thought of is obviously we have, non-resident students coming to OSU and things like that. With the licensure, obviously that provides an Oregon, teaching license, but what does the reciprocity kind of process look like if a student wanted to maybe return back home? Is that up to the requirements in that home state, or how would that work for a student that maybe thinks that they might not want to teach in the state of Oregon and return home to kind of pursue their professional career?
I can start, and then Jordan, I'd love for you to. Jordan's out of state, so he can provide that insight as the student, and I can provide the insight as the advisor.
Yeah.
And so, we have the Oregon teaching license has reciprocity with 46 states, and so students are able to transfer out their Oregon license to their home state. There are a few exceptions, of course. So there are about 4 states that we don't currently have reciprocity with, and so that ensures that you are meeting the requirements to go back if you want to teach in California. you would have a license to be able to transfer. Now, some states do set additional requirements for their teaching license, or what they want the qualifications of their teachers to have. For example, California does require the ESOL endorsement. And so, Jordan, I will turn it to you to talk a little bit more about, transferring your license and what that might look like for you.
Yeah, so when I started, obviously my advisor knew that I was from California. And so it was a discussion from the start of, if you have any interest in possibly going home to teach, we really recommend you get the ESOL endorsement because it is a requirement. That being said, a lot of states, because of the reciprocity pathway, will let you move and start working on an Oregon license and then a preliminary license in that state while you fulfill other requirements. So, for example, if I wasn't pursuing the ESOL endorsement now, but wanted to move back to California, a lot of districts would let me start working while I pursue that extra endorsement just to help me out a little bit.
Awesome. Good to know. The next kind of big topic I wanted to ask you all about is kind of some insights on why a student would want to consider pursuing the College of Education at OSU, right? When I think we talk to a lot of students, the first thing they think about is like STEM, research, engineering, computer science, and things like that. So just maybe some insight, reasons why you think a student would want to consider attending OSU to pursue their teaching credentials, or maybe Jordan, if you want to share kind of like what your thought process was when you were maybe choosing between schools and why you ultimately chose OSU, if you want to share some of your experience and what that's been like.
Definitely. I ended up here, honestly, after touring the campus and just feeling the community on campus and in Corvallis. So that's my biggest thing when I tell students is if you think maybe, go visit. One of the great things about our College of Education is that you have access to all of the pros of a big university, the athletics, the resources, the scholarships. But through the College of Education, you get smaller class sizes. You get more individualized academic support from faculty, advising support from our team here. So you get kind of the best of both worlds, in my opinion. And having that touch point in such a overwhelming university has been really important to me. And I also just love Corvallis and Oregon generally. So I think if students are wanting an education degree, in my humble opinion, I think OSU and Corvallis campus is perfect.
Thank you for sharing. I like to have also like those experiences, the stories that I can tell students, because I also agree too, a lot of it is, what area you want to pursue for a major, but right, what type of college experience that you're looking for. So it might not necessarily be that, the campus is a good fit for you, but maybe the program that you're interested in. So it's always good to hear like how students make those decisions and things to think about outside of just the major that you're wanting to pursue and how those things can impact your ultimate decision. You mentioned something about like scholarships and like clubs and things like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe some opportunities for like involvement in the College of Education, whether that's a club or organization or various different scholarships that students might have access to as a student through the College of Education at OSU?
Oh my goodness, how much time do we have to talk about my favorite thing? So we have a College of Education specific peer mentorship program. It is, again, how much time do we have? It is our Meant to Teach mentorship program. Currently, it is available to first year, first time students, so both transfer students and freshmen maybe coming out of high school. And so it's an opt-in program, and students who opt in get access to a College of Education mentor who has been here for a year or two and can kind of help them navigate their first year at Oregon State University. We also do exclusive events throughout the year. In the fall, we did a cute pumpkin painting event where we gathered, had some pizza, watched, some, festive movies and painted pumpkins. In the winter, we do an annual bowling tournament where we give out GOAT trophies and we go bowl in MU lanes. In the spring, we're planning a nice big outdoor event of some sort, still in the works, but it is a mentorship program for kind of guidance and community in your first year. Jordan, you've been really involved with the Meant to Teach program. If you want to share kind of your insights or other stories.
Yeah, it unfortunately was not a thing when I was a freshman. So I didn't get to experience it from the mentee side, but I was a mentor for it. And I feel like it's a great opportunity for freshmen and first year transfer students to just have another point of contact because, of course, there are no bad questions, but it can be really scary to approach an advisor sometimes with things
Right.
I don't know where this building is, or things advisors maybe can't answer, like, what's your opinion on this professor?
Mhm.
Having that student connection is really important. And I am still good friends with my mentee who I mentored, and she still reaches out to me about questions, and she has her own mentees now. So it's been kind of a passing down process in the program, which has been really cool to see.
All right. Is there anything, I guess, on top of our conversation that we haven't talked about that you feel like would be important to add, or that a prospective student should know, whether it's relevant to just their college search and advice you might have, or things that might be good to know about OSU, College of Ed, anything like that?
I do, since we focus so much on meta teach, some scholarship opportunities. And so students who are admitted should have access to scholar dollars. And that's something that we try to plug regularly for both prospective admitted students and also current students, because the College of Education does have a pool of money available specifically to students who are interested in pursuing one of our majors. And so definitely wanting students to kind of check that out, because that is a fantastic resource. Another scholarship that we have specifically for our student teachers is the Teacher Licensure Support Fund. And so there are costs associated with becoming a teacher that are not covered by tuition, so might not be covered by those scholarships that students might be receiving or any FAFSA aid that they receive. And so we have a reimbursement process where students prior to and during student teaching apply for the fund, and we reimburse them for the cost of becoming a student teacher, right? So actually submitting their application to become licensed, doing, those fingerprints cost money. That we want to reimburse our students, so there's not additional barriers to becoming a teacher.
Oh, very cool. I wasn't familiar with that. So that's, a very great opportunity that students have access to. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, thank you both for being here today and sharing all of your knowledge. It was really great to chat with you both and to learn from you about OSU's College of Education. And to those of you listening in, thank you for joining us. We hope you can join us for our next episode of Beaver Tracks. It'll be a damn good time.